Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the weekly review. We've got some great guests with us today. We've got Leanne, we've got John Gibbs, we've got Brent Poland, and we've got Shaniqua, who is joining us for the first time today. Is it the first time?
Yeah, it is the first time. So thanks for having me, everyone.
And we've got plenty on the agenda today, including new sex education guidance. We've got discussion about GCSE and A-level choices. And we've also got a discussion about conferences and why so many are being cancelled in recent times. But before we move on to that, I should remind you that this show is sponsored by the Happy Confident Company, which I know Brent is a big fan of. They are a company that provide resources for you for mental health and well-being in your classroom. And for 10 minutes a day, you can sit with your class and you can have a lovely time talking about well-being and all these things that are very important at the moment. So if you want to know more about that, go to happyconfident.com. Miss out the company when you are looking for that website. So let us get cracking, everybody, with our first story. So this came out recently, and there's going to be updated guidance on sex education in schools, which will be published for consultation in the autumn, with an expert panel appointed to advise on age ratings in a bid to ensure disturbing or inappropriate content is not being taught. Gillian Keegan has said that the well-being and safeguarding of children is our absolute priority, and I share the concerns of parents and teachers about reports that inappropriate lessons are being taught in schools. Leanne, I'm going to come to you first for thoughts on this.
So the one quote was, the biggest challenge they face is the fact that we've been left to deliver the subject with little support and training. And I agree with that. I was PSHE lead in my old school, and I think it's probably one of the hardest subjects to teach. It's so sensitive. There's so many angles to it, and children come from so many different backgrounds that, I mean, I don't know how you differentiate emotionally, never mind academically, for that kind of subject. So I think we're trained to teach English and maths very well, and those kind of topics, history, science even, we're left as like jacks of all trades in primary. And you sometimes wonder, like, there's so many expert subject teachers in high school, and then they give out subjects to primary school teachers to lead, and like, why, where's my expertise in the subject? I don't have any. I think you're just expected to read around subjects, which especially for sex ed makes it quite difficult, and you can go down rabbit holes sometimes with it. So yeah, I think it's a difficult one. And children often pose the hardest questions in those kind of lessons. So yeah, it's a hard one.
Yes, I can see Shaniqua nodding sagely there. What would you like to add to this? I know are you still working in a PRU?
Yes, yeah. So
how does it work there?
Still in a PRU. Well, it's a bit we're still working on that. But I was really agreeing with Leanne in so many different ways, because actually, firstly, I just feel like a lot of us are given primary school teachers leads for subjects that, we don't have the best expertise in. We learn a lot. We do CPD, we try our best. A lot of people try their best doing their own CPD. And, RSHE, that's a hard one. That is a difficult one because it covers such sensitive topics. And I think someone mentioned that there's little guidance and support from the government in terms of training and resources when it comes to real complex and sensitive subjects with RSHE. And, some teachers, and I can imagine, they try their best, but if there's no real guidance, what can they do? So this is really interesting about this update on the guidance. But, reading about the expert panel, I don't really see any school leads there. I don't see any RSHE leads, any people in the classroom. That's what confused me a bit. I can see some of you agreeing. That's a bit shocked.
Yes, absolutely.
John, what's your take on this?
Well, for start, tremendous sympathy with anyone in dealing with this in an environment where they feel unprepared, and it is incredibly difficult and sensitive and hard subject to find yourself. But listening to Leanne there and Shaniqua, they clearly, you're thinking about it, and your teachers doing the professional thing of thinking about it and realizing it's difficult. And that's in a sense, what's happened is an expert panel is set up because there's an imaginary idea that teachers aren't doing what you're doing, which is thinking about it sensibly and thinking about it in a grown-up sort of way, that somehow they're launching into it in an inappropriate way. And this suggestion from Gillian that, inappropriate lessons are being taught, I bet they're not. Or if they are, it's going to be an extremely rare occurrence. In the Birmingham Trojan Horse affair, parents demonstrated outside a school from a conservative, very deeply conservative cultural group. They conservative at school. The message had gone around that their children were being taught all sorts of terrible things. When the school spoke to the parents, the whole confrontation calmed down, and they realised that what was going on wasn't that bad. Or the drag queen going into a school in the Isle of Man. It turned out parents were up in arms, threats were sent to teachers. Turns out that when the investigation took place, it was very benign, very calm, very mature and very sensible. No one had been offended. Students hadn't been traumatized. That had all been cooked up or been Chinese whispers and so on. So, trust teachers. Anyone listening to you two, instantly you just think, well, yeah, it's difficult. Who said it wasn't?
And I do often wonder, I have this kind of image that goes around in my head of just, what do you imagine we're doing? We're sort of onto the whiteboard and we're showing, I mean, I have to be careful what I say here, but goodness only knows what to try. Because I do wonder, what does inappropriate content or inappropriate lessons mean, Gillian? I mean, Brent, I don't know if you have a very quick thought on this as to what, I mean, again, we have to tread carefully. This is a Sunday morning after all, but what you imagine that means.
Yeah, I was the most unpopular guy at school for a while because I was a PHSE coordinator in a Catholic school. So, and I changed the curriculum and started teaching what PHSE lessons were. And what was interesting, I went for church guidance and I was perfectly fine. Same as things like homosexuality. And I had some Catholic teachers go, come teach us in the Catholic school. And let me just demonstrate to you. There's the real world. There's Catholic world. Somewhere in between, we have to teach between our children. And it takes, the majority of schools get it right because majority of teachers are in this game because they care about the kids.
Yes.
Majority of PHC coordinators adapt the materials. What has happened here is a knee-jerk reaction, culture wars, blah, 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 the headlines in the local thing, how an election's going to be fought. It's just politically motivated. The thing is, we do need guidance. Completely agree with Leanne, completely agree with John and Shanika. Absolutely. You need some sort of structured guidance, but guidance has got to be fair, impartial, non-biased, and it's not got to be politically motivated. It's got to be what our children need, potentially now, and of course in the future as well. And I think reading between the lines, what actually has happened is there was an outside agency brought in to deliver some sex education lessons, and on their website, there was inappropriate material somewhere on their website. Now, they didn't come into school and deliver that material. It was on their website. Maybe if we checked our WhatsApp messages, we might have even more scandal, but who knows?
Well, I mean, I think the chance of it sort of everybody agreeing from the top down on how this is going to work, I think we're going to be back and forthing for a while. But anyway, let us move on. Now, I'm afraid there's no jiggery pokery in between, so just smile sweetly, everybody. We're going to move on. So next up, languages and the creative arts are falling out of favour amongst GCSE and A-level students who are increasingly opting for more vocational subjects such as computing and business studies. And I've got some provisional figures for England here that show exam entries for German have fallen by 17%, and A-level students have fallen by 17% for A-level students and 6% for GCSE students. Spanish and French are down 13%, and that's at A-level. But there's been a 5% increase for Spanish, and French entries have stayed at a similar level. Not all subjects have benefited from an uplift, or not all of them benefited from an uplift. A-level entries for performing arts are down 19%, and then GCSE level entries for performing arts are down 16% on 2022, music 12%, and drama 7%. Brent, I'm going to come to you first on this. What are your take on this? Because I know I mean, I don't know how many subjects you're teaching at the moment, but history, I think, is your main one, correct?
History, geography, yeah. It was always a 50-50 history and geography. And ironically, I'm benefiting from this because I've got a record number of historians next year, which worries me because I want the kids to be intrinsically motivated. We are pathwaying children. This is to do with the options in baccalaureate and Michael Gove's agenda. I think it's also to do with tuition fees at universities. Kids are now looking and saying, well, I'm going to do an arts degree, come out with 50 grand's worth of debt and not get a job out of it. So I think there's that aspect of marketization, the way education is now being a business, and kids just can't afford to do arts degrees unless they are, from a certain cultural capital. The last thing I'd say about it is such a tragedy. I mean, Shakespeare, Tennyson, what has this country done best? It's culture, it's arts, those type of subjects. And you think that was an absolute, we're going to be a cultural graveyard in the future. And that's sad that the education is there to enrich people. It's there to be creative. It's there, things that we've done so much. But a problem I think that we also have is this is feeding into behavior as well, because children aren't doing the subjects they want to do. They're doing the subjects they're being kind of forced into it. So you're more extrinsic motivation rather than your intrinsic. So I think this is just another situation that's been created artificially. And we're seeing the follow through now the last couple of years. And that's fallen all the way through to degrees. If you track that with degrees, you'd find a similar pattern to what's happening at degree level as well.
And do you think, and John, I'm going to put this to you, that we're asking children to kind of narrow it down too young? Because I remember sitting there as a sort of year 9 age, so 14, and trying to choose between history and geography, for example. And it was only later that I came to regret I loved doing history and that's what I chose. But the fact that at 14 years old, I stopped doing geography seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, Britain, the UK stands out in the world among the early specialisation. We narrow it. We narrow what students do at school much earlier than most other countries, and of course, A levels and the sixth form, even more so. There is, of course, some students will tell you that when they enter sixth forms that they are delighted to do things in depth, and they are experiencing and able to shed certain subjects they didn't like. Others, as you say, will say that they had to give up subjects they really liked. I think undoubtedly the sixth form A level route is too narrow, and it forces students to make all sorts of choices. I was struck, Brent, by what you said about the marketization. One of the features I noticed as I taught over the years was the instrument that students, probably quite sensibly actually, became increasingly instrumental. And it would manifest itself in questions like, will this be in the exam? Or do I need to know this? Whereas I thought, culturally, I seem to remember joy in the subject. I know I'm being horribly idealistic here, but delight in learning was there. And you'd say things like, well, this may not be in the exam, but we all should know about these sorts of things. So you taught around the subjects. And the books and the textbooks increasingly said things you need to know to pass, essential guides to passing. Well, if your aim at school is success and money and career, well, then don't choose drama. For goodness sake, actors are mostly out of work most of the time. You know that. And don't choose waffly art subjects. Although, of course, the actual economy of our country is highly dependent on creative people and the creative arts. Nonetheless, in schools, it's dominated by ideas of what will make you money in the future.
It's interesting because you just reminded me of something, and I think this has come up recently. I can't remember in whose show or where this discussion came about, but it was, what did we miss during COVID? It was that theatre, that being able to go and see live whatever, music and things like that. So to then suddenly revert back to the idea that these subjects are not going to get you anywhere, I think was the sort of the idea that was perpetuated even when I was at school. And Shaniqua, I don't know if it's the same for you as well. And I don't remember receiving particularly good advice in terms of what direction to take I was that student who really kind of didn't know what to do after GCSE, and so ended up taking sciences, which turned out were not my jam. I don't know if anyone else kind of had an ill-advised experience at A level or even at GCSE. No one?
No. I think, do you know what? I remember thinking I want to choose what I enjoy. And I remember a lot of like people around me, their parents, and actually my parents were a bit like that. They were like, yeah, but what's going to make you money? And it's just like, that's so sad, because I feel like that's what's happening right now. Well, when I was reading up about this, you know, computing A-level entries are rising, which is great. Business studies is becoming, you know, increasingly popular. But our creative arts are going down. And I'm just like, you know, we all understand technology, computing, you know, you can do well money-wise. Business studies, great. But there's something about learning a new language and, you know, developing it. You know, thank gosh for me, my parents in the end said, do what makes you happy. And, you know, I did German. So it's quite sad to see that's going down. But nice to see Spanish is up there. And I did art, which, to be fair, you know, it's helped me in my art lessons with my kids. But I enjoyed it. And, you know, actually thinking back to when I did exams and stuff, it's just like with John, I remember everyone saying, yeah, but what's actually in the test? And actually, as an adult now, I'm like, it's just great to have learned those things and to be able to have discussions with people about history and what was going on. And, you know, just because that wasn't in the test doesn't mean it's something that I shouldn't know about, especially me. I grew up in Tottenham, North London, and actually we should be soaking in all the information because, you know, people already look down. Some people look down on us already. So, yes, yeah, it's quite sad to read that. But as Brent said, education is becoming a business, or it is a business for some. So very sad, very sad. So yeah.
I think we've seen like a lot with education. It just, subject choice doesn't seem to have moved with the times. Like, why aren't we teaching Chinese, for example? Why are we still teaching the European languages?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting that I actually did my show this week was all about primary MFL, and one of the guests, Alex, was talking about how in his school from a young age they the children studied different languages just for a kind of short periods of time, just to kind of taste it. And they were doing all sorts of things: Russian, Mandarin. I can't remember if Arabic was in there, but they were certainly moving beyond the realms of sort of your traditional kind of French, German, and Spanish. So that was really cool. So there are things happening in corners. It's just we need them to expand out. So there are.
To answer Leanne's question, the reason that is because I've worked with international schools. So I was part of an international schools of the British Council. Was out in Dubai, and the thing is, they were like, "Why aren't you teaching Arabic?" And Arabic's such a fast-growing language, and equally exactly the same. Why are we teaching Mandarin? We just don't have the staff, and that's the thing. That's why German is declining. Teachers now prefer. I mean, a lot of languages teachers train with French and Spanish. You know, my languages teachers are French, Spanish, and they've actually introduced more. Spanish is on the rise, and French. And what they've even started to do is they started an hour with the curriculum even earlier, where they give themselves a head start. They've started to stream the kids at year 8, for instance, into making the choice for the language to give them that extra bit of a head start. So they'll only do French maybe for 1 year in year 7, and then they're then they get a choice between French and Spanish then, and they stay in Spanish then for the next 4 years. Because that's, you know, we're up against British children. But I've always answered the question with languages when the kids say to me, "Sir, what do I need to learn French for? I'm never going to live in France." I'm like, well, please remember, you translate French into your own language, and that would give you a better command of your own language, because it's called modern foreign languages as well. And a lot of our children, British children, are anti-languages because they just don't see the point, but they don't realize they're actually enriching their own culture and their own language. And those language teachers are sometimes doing things English teachers never do about the construct of words and languages. So I think it's very sad if people aren't taking languages, but they shouldn't be forced into languages, and it has to come very early. And it's interesting at primary, they do a lot of sampling of languages at primary. My daughters come in with all sorts of languages. You think it never gets picked up. It sort of gets lost, doesn't it? It's like a bit of a token. And I think that's where you need to hit. You need it a lot earlier, a lot more, and then let it stick. So
Yeah.
Can I jump in on one thing you just said there? You used the phrase enriching culture. And even though it's going to probably offend a lot of teachers of business studies, I think there is an inverse relationship between the amount of study of business studies in any culture and the delight in the kind of country you want to live in. I think you'd want to live in a country where people study arts and creativity and philosophy and thinking of those kinds. And I don't think you really want to live in a society where business studies is widely taught. sorry, business studies teachers.
Controversial stuff from John Gibbs there. Oh gosh, I didn't expect that my hosting duties this morning. Well, but I think you're spot on, and it's. I mean, we could delve into this a lot more, and I'm sure that across Teachers Talk Radio there will be more discussions on this, as I feel it's very hot at the moment. But before we move on once again, a reminder that our sponsor is the Happy Confident Company, who are a lovely organisation providing tools that you can use in class to help with well-being and mental health, something else that's very much at the forefront of the agenda at the moment and always should be. And so if you want to learn more about them, please go to happyconfident.com. Okay, moving on to our third story this morning, which is about the fact that the National Association for Teachers of English, who were meant to hold their conference on the 24th and the 25th of June this year, have had to cancel due to little uptake in interest. And I just want to read you their letter that they put out, or at least part of it, because it's actually quite a sad read. And it says, "Dear colleague, it is with deep regret that we've made the decision to cancel the NATE's annual conference this summer, scheduled to take place at the CLPE and British Library in London. Despite our best efforts and months of advertising, we have not managed to secure the numbers to make this a viable event for delegates, speakers, exhibitors, sponsors, and our generous hosts, who were understandably expecting, as we were, a great deal of interest. You'll be aware that we've been forced to cancel a number of face-to-face conferences over recent years, mainly due to the pandemic. We hope this would have been a good opportunity to celebrate our 60th birthday with wonderful speakers. We're very sorry to have left this decision so late. So we thought an increase in advertising and a reduction in ticket prices and a final push would have yielded more success. I should stress here, without trying to sort of put a further downer on it for them, that their tickets, I believe, were about £125 for this event. So coming to Shaniqua on this first, because I know that you participate through your union dealings at a lot of conferences and a lot of different events. So what is your take on this?
Well, I love a good conference. I think conferences are great. There's great CPD. It's just great to meet people who are in the same, same industry, going through the same things. You get ideas. It's so great. Sometimes, there's a little dinner, personal connections are formed. So actually reading that and listening to that is quite sad. It's actually really sad, the fact that there's this conference planned. British Library, sounds like they had great speakers. And, unfortunately, they didn't get enough people taking up the offer. But I would say, after reading up, I was like, £125 a ticket. That's a lot of money. There are some great conferences I've been to that are free, either free because my union's paid for it, or they're like £30. And I know you've got to contribute to, they've got to pay for speakers, all of that. I do get that, but it's the cost of living crisis out here. And actually, that's a lot of money. I'll go on my Twitter and I'll talk to people on there, teachers on there, because I can't afford all of that. But I don't know. It's really sad because I feel like that's a missed opportunity. But what I would say is with the National Association for Teachers of English, I think they could have done better at advertising. Just from reading up from other people, I know if there's a conference, I'm getting emails about it all the time. People are tweeting about it. With them, I can't lie. This was like the first time I found out about that. Not that I'm a, English teacher, but I'm a bit like, okay, you could have publicized it a bit more, reduced your tickets maybe earlier. So I feel like I see lots of other conferences doing really well, and I hope that continues. And we need face-to-face conferences, because I did think, and someone might disagree with me, where it's nice to, be on a conference at home online like this, but actually face-to-face, I think it does mean a lot. I'm going to stop talking now. Sorry, guys.
It's important to hear from you. Brent, what is your take on this? Because I know you're a lovely, you like an event as well.
I do, yeah. I mean, I see it both ways. I've done hybrid conferences and I've done conference face to face. Nothing beats face to face. I mean, the interpersonal, the reactions, talking to people, meeting people. I was at a conference recently and somebody had never seen me in the flesh. And the first thing they noticed about me went, "Gosh, you're really short." And I went, oh okay. I don't know what to go with that. And somebody went, "I was expecting you to be a lot taller." And I'm like, "Thanks for that. Okay, pleased to meet you." And it was just one of those things that somebody had this impression of you. I was a giant of a man. Maybe the camera adds a lot of height as well. I mean,
great
Tom Cruise has been getting away with it for years, but that was it, and it was just an interesting comment of that never met me and then had a cup of tea with him and you just get so much done. Even a conflict resolution situation where we have a group of people online we're having issues with, met them in flesh within 5 minutes, handshake, absolutely resolved. It's the same as the kids. It's exactly the same as the kids, isn't it? Online it gets you so far, but nothing beats an actual face-to-face. Same as parents. I don't like online parents' evenings. And I don't like emails. I'd rather see a parent straight in the eyes, face-to-face, have a conversation with them, have a smile, and use your interpersonal skills. However, the caveat, of course, is we are in a cost of living crisis. Railway strikes. It is expensive. It is London. It was at the weekend. I was thinking if it was during the week, people don't get released. So some conferences, if they are during the week, we have a staff shortage problem at the moment. And I know, for instance, if I went to my head teacher and said, "Hi, boss, can I have a day off to go to a conference?" the response might be, "How much is that going to cost us as well?" So, staffing budgets and hybrid as well. But I think some people factor in, why am I going to go down to a conference? But I suppose what conferences have to do now is go above and beyond and make themselves even more accessible and pull people in, because it's obvious that people would decide I'd stay at home. So they need to work a little harder and maybe look at the cost implications for people to make it more viable.
Mm-hmm. Leanne, have you been to anything recently, or is it just not been workable for you?
Recently, no, I don't think since probably COVID. I agree completely with Shaniqua. I have a colleague who is a rep for one of the phonics schemes, and they have these conferences, and I guess they're free because you're getting paid to go to it, and they sound amazing. And I'm trying to convince her to take me as a +1. It hasn't worked yet, so any suggestions would be great. But I agree, that's £125 is a lot of money, and like Shaniqua said, 30 quid I would probably pay myself and just go. I would never pay £125. It's too much money. But we also, we never get time to just sit and chat to colleagues. Like, we have staff meetings, but they're more like lectures, so you don't really have time to chat. And my final point is that, they always wonder why teachers on break duty just stand and chat. Like, well, we never get time to do that. So that's the best time to have a chat with a colleague, is break duty.
Yeah.
That's my
and John, I think anything to add?
Absolutely. I mean, what I can hear from all of you is what I experience. Teachers love a bit of a day out and a conference, an opportunity to hobnob with other teachers, to get away from the classroom, to reflect on what you're doing. And if you see the childlike delight teachers will take when they bring biscuits with the tea, and they say, "Oh, biscuits! Wow.
True.
We're being treated like we're proper people." So any small thing like that, biscuits, a nice lunch, absolutely lovely and delightful, and a chance again to be treated like a professional and realize you're among a profession.
And I think also, I went to Rome recently for ResearchEd's latest conference, but I turned that into a whole weekend. That was out of my own pocket. And my mum asked me, she said, would school pay just for your ticket to the event? And I said, don't be funny, I didn't even approach it with them, because I knew what the answer would be. And I think this forms kind of more of a thing about CPD in general, which is hugely lacking at the moment across the board from everybody I've spoken to. Yes, there are great things happening. I know Teach Me Icons as well are doing what they can to kind of bring teachers together for free or for as little cost as possible. So there are things that do exist that are trying to bring people together online or in person as much as possible. But of course, again, often these things are in big cities as well, Manchester, London, etc., which not everybody can get to, particularly again with train strikes and everything else. So it is difficult. But I know Teachers Talk Radio are also trying to do their part, and I know a lot of hosts treat their shows as the kind of CPD they wish they could have. And again, whilst it's not in person, of course, we try and have, and I know we have a lot of discussions on Twitter Spaces, and people drop in and pop in and out of those, which is good. So there are things happening in corners of the world where we are trying to make it better and to get together and to talk as much as we can. Even weekly review like this, we get as much as it's kind of discussing what's going on. It's not always necessarily positive. It is trying to it is a chance to chat, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think the point I was going to make, sorry, I forgot to make the point. It was being a Saturday and a Sunday, you're teaching all week and you're asking to go to Saturday and a Sunday as well. If that conference was maybe a Wednesday and Thursday and staff were released, I think the uptake would have been a lot higher. But you're doing a full week, end of exam season, you're asking teachers to go down to London for 2 days and then go back and teach 5 more days. I think that's possibly where people made the calculation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also think there is space for big companies and organizations to contact schools and to kind of offer sort of opportunities for them to come in and do things as well. I did Lego training this week, which was great, and that was people coming in. That's kind of the first thing I've done for a long time in school. So yeah, I mean, there are ways and means to do these things, but again, budgets are a nightmare and things like that. And there's of course other major stuff going on, and maybe CPD is on the back burner. But to end on a more positive note, normally we do our show choices, so our favorite show of the week. But to shake it up a bit, and this one actually has come from Tom Hopkins Burke, which I've nicked from him with his permission. I would like to know from all of you what your highlight of the term has been so far, and you've each got about 30 seconds in which to deliver this to me. So who am I going to nominate first? I'm actually going to pick on John, who I know, although is not working in education. What is your highlight of just life at the moment, John?
Well, a story we didn't talk about, which was mooted, was teachers abandoning their pension and to save money, And I thought, well, as a retired teacher, don't do that. because the highlight of my term, in a sense, is every day, and it's a nice experience. Looking, how many years have I looked out of a classroom window and seen a delightful summer's day emerging, and thinking, oh my goodness, it's still 3 or 4 or 5 weeks to go until the summer holidays. Now I know that I don't want to say I focused solely on the summer holidays, but there is at this time of year there is a feeling of, my goodness, can I really get through these next 4 or 5 weeks? And for me, the answer is yes, I can, and always will do from now on.
Leanne, what about you?
So I teach reception this year and last year, and I covered in year 1. And one of my little girls from last year came up to me and said, "Miss Lax, it's so lovely to see you again." And I thought that was very sweet. Quite mature.
Brent, what about you?
I suppose my highlight, my term is my staff, my colleagues, getting through the strikes, and getting stronger. In fact, I was quite surprised with some of the responses of some of my colleagues. I thought I was going to have to be Arthur Scargill and whip them up into some sort of militant, fight the power. They weren't. They were approaching me and saying, "I want to go on strike." People joining my union to go on strike. Well, the way that my professional colleagues and even my head teacher approached it was exceptional, and even some of the parent support. So the highlight of the term really was staff rallying around me. I thought it was going to be difficult, and in fact, it turned out to be quite an empowering situation to have my colleagues stand up for education, and made me very proud of them, and made me sort of vindicated in what we were doing. So that was my highlight of my term.
Fabulous. Shaniqua, coming to you.
Okay, those are some great highlights. So thank you guys. With me, so I work in a primary pupil referral unit. So every day is very different, and it can be quite challenging at times. And I'd say I've had some new children over this last half term, and they've been amazing, where people have this perception of children improves, and actually these children, when they came, their behavior was a bit woo, but they've really like just been so calm. Their parents have come in like with such positive feedback and said, you know, my child enjoys coming into school. You know, I've not had the throwing of chairs from them recently, and it's just, that's so great. And even the other day, one was like, Miss, I want to bake you a cake. What cake would you like? And it's things like when I used to work in mainstream, you know, that's a bit normal sometimes. Some of the children are like, I'm going to bake you something. But to be in a Peru, a child says that. And, you know, the parents like, we went shopping because they really want to do that. Like, I feel like I'm making an influence. So that's positive for me. So thank you.
Super cool. For me, we had Children's Day this week, which is kind of a traditional thing that I think happens in Portugal and other places as well. And we just had a lovely day of different things going on within school. It was also in conjunction with Wear It Wild Day, where children get to dress up as different animals and things like that, or just come in their home clothes. And my kids were like, do we have to dress up as an animal? I said, look, you come in whatever you're comfortable in. We had things where we were splatting teachers. There were lots of different games, throwing loo rolls into a kind of cardboard toilet and things like that, you know, silly things. But it's just nice for them, you know, when they've been through their various kind of assessments and bits and pieces, just to be kids, and just see them running around and having a great time and getting hopped up on sweets that they were getting for the game. So that was lovely. Yeah, I think that was probably my highlight for now. And then I think the next highlight will be for all of us getting to the, well, apart from John, but getting to the end of the academic year. I've just heard from Leanne that it's 29th of July for you. Did you say?
Oh, well, that's
so that's a long old journey. But we'll get there.
Yeah, it's quite far, Leanne. But you know, I'm excited for you. We're getting there. It's June.
Yes. We'll come eventually.
My last week of term, I'm on an activity week, PGL activity week. So I'm just gonna throw that one in there.
Oh wow! Is that so? That's residential, is it?
Yeah, climbing trees, and I'll be climbing the walls.
Yeah, I think it's getting to residential time as well. I know that mine's coming up as well. So we'll see how we get on and how many grey hairs I have after that. But I just want to say a very big thank you to all of you for joining me this morning. It's been a lovely panel. It's been a great discussion, and I hope that some of you will join me or whoever is in the chair next week. Final reminder that Happy Confident Company are sponsoring us at the moment. And if you want to check out their resources, they are at www.happyconfident.com. Please do go and check out their wellbeing and mental health resources for your classroom. To all of you, have a lovely rest of the weekend. And thank you again. And we will see you all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.